What is up, guys? Rick Kakis here, and today we have another Anthem update discussing the latest news and information on BioWare's new game. And if you are someone who's interested in Anthem, I think you're really gonna enjoy today's video. We've got some super interesting new info. But first, we've got about 5 to 10 minutes of like goals, competitions, and sponsorships. I'm just playing. Let's get right into the information. Now, most of today's information does come from our boy, Brennan Holmes, who is the technical design director at BioWare working on Anthem. He's incredibly active on Reddit and he divulges a ton of information. So, firstly, let's talk about BioWare's API. Doesn't sound very flashy, but it is something that is going to increase the quality of life of the game greatly if done properly. Now, an API and an open API essentially lets third-party applications access the game's files. Best example of this, Destiny and Destiny 2. They have an open API and therefore you have applications like Ishtar Commander and Destiny Item Manager that can actually manipulate the game's files, and you get an app on your phone that can transfer loot from character to character. Imagine how annoying it would be to play Destiny or Destiny 2 without those applications, where you had to go to the vault, transfer stuff into the vault, switch characters, go back, load into the tower, go to the vault, get that stuff out. It would be tedious and incredibly annoying. But will Anthem allow for the same thing? Because Anthem is another loot-based game. Presumably you can have multiple characters. Are you going to be able to have these third-party apps that make your life a lot easier? Well, someone asked this question, and BioWare responded with, yep, we're really interested in this idea. Personally, I've played around a lot with Riot's API, and I've also really been impressed by what the community has done with Destiny's API. I'd love to see what you folks could do if we had one as well. So that's very good news. In fact, someone actually responds to that saying Riot and Battlerite have outsourced their API handling to a company called Mad Glory and links it, and BioWare responds saying that's great info, thanks, I'll let our online services team know about that. Essentially, that's important because if BioWare can't do it internally, this guy's saying, look, you can outsource it and still get it done and really benefit the community, and BioWare acknowledged that directly. So it does look like this is a very good indication that Anthem will have an open API and allow third-party apps to make your life a lot easier. So moving on from there, let's get into some more impactful information. How do the controls work and feel within Anthem? Well, someone asked that. How do the movement/combat controls feel within the game? And says, I didn't really like Mass Effect's controls. They felt quite clunky. Now, as someone who played a ton of Mass Effect, I love that series. I somewhat disagree. I certainly got used to the Mass Effect controls, but this person does cite that The Division possesses a much smoother movement system, and as someone who also plays a lot of The Division, yeah, they're probably right about that over Mass Effect. But BioWare does respond, saying, our lead gameplay designer, Chris King, has a lot of experience with combat design and feel. I think we're in good hands. The person who asked the question then replies, thanks for the reply, just my personal opinion, but the way Mass Effect felt while playing was a huge reason I could never get into that series. Didn't really care about story, I guess, but BioWare responds again saying, fair enough, I think you'll probably have to wait and see then. I think it feels really good, in brackets, on the suits and weapons that have been polished the most, but it's probably best if you judge for yourself. Very fair, very reasonable answer, and we can actually get a lot from this. Firstly, I'm sure some of you are wondering, who the heck is Chris King? Well, looked him up. He's very experienced within the industry. He's the lead gameplay designer on Anthem, and he was the lead gameplay designer on Mass Effect Andromeda. And I know a lot of you guys, there is like alarm bells going off right now because Andromeda was not a very good game. It just wasn't. But Andromeda did have a lot of problems, mainly having to do with the storytelling, the facial animations, that stuff, not necessarily too much with the movement. However, I did feel like the movement was almost worse than the original Mass Effect series, but Chris King also worked as the lead sandbox designer in Halo 4 and Halo 5, and he worked on Saints Row 2, so he is an extremely experienced person within the industry, and I think that's what BioWare is getting at, is like, this person's very, very experienced. Yes, Mass Effect Andromeda didn't go well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but hopefully Chris King can bring his A game to Anthem. Now, something important that I want to mention is that Brennan Holmes is choosing which questions to answer. This question came from a big thread where there was many questions, so him specifically selecting the one about movement and combat means that he really wants to answer that, and that probably means that he's very confident in how the movement and combat feels in game. You're not going to answer something that you're like, oh yeah, the game doesn't have a lot of that. You're going to skip over that question, right? So again, you've got to look at what questions he is answering as probably a positive towards those features in game. But we've got much more information on the movement and combat system. Now, in the previous Anthem update, we mentioned how the open world would work and the size of the open world. And one of the things Brennan Holmes said was that they utilized natural geography, like flying through a canyon, to load what's in front of you and unload what's behind you. Essentially what any game would have to do. Someone responded to that saying, I don't want to get overly comment mining about this, but it seems to imply the flight mechanics of the game will not be 100% go anywhere flight style, as that would allow you to rise above any canyon walls and view both sides at once. Now, Brendan Holmes did respond, sorry, this was a general comment on streaming, not necessarily what we're doing, and adds an edit. That said, we do have limitations on flight. We want you to feel a sense of freedom, but there are always performance considerations that need to be taken into account. So that brings up the topic of flight, and it's something that I think a lot of people and news outlets are completely ignoring. I still see comments saying, stupid trash Destiny clone, that's all Anthem is. But you can fly in Anthem. You can literally jetpack around the map, and this opens up absolutely insane possibilities. Think about a combat scenario. Are you able in Anthem to just fly above an enemy completely behind him and ambush him? Are you able to completely go off and fly to a sniper position off in the distance? Are you able to engage enemies from the air? These are huge things that's going to extremely differentiate Anthem from other loot-based games like The Division, of course, and even Destiny. But unfortunately, the flight system in Anthem is a bunch of questions and unknowns. Until today, Brennan Holmes provided a full paragraph of brand new information about the flight mechanics in Anthem. It's the most information we've ever gotten, so strap yourselves in. So he says, I mentioned it in another thread, but we really want you to feel a sense of freedom with our exploration mechanics. Personally, I'm not a really big exploration guy, but I do find myself just noodling around and checking out different areas just because I can. There will be some amount of progression and skill expression with flying, which will affect how far you can go and what you can do in the air. There will also be limits as to how high you can go. We're playing around with a flight ceiling prototype right now. It's fairly subtle and feels more like a heavy downdraft. We'll have to see about specific height limitations. It's all kind of up in the air right now, great pun, as it's mostly dependent on performance. So, there you go. A huge chunk of information, and it tells us so much. So that one middle sentence, there will be some amount of progression and skill expression with flying. That is huge. And that means that flying isn't just a baseline mechanic. It's not like moving, where moving is moving. You can't really address that too much. And I think a lot of people may have been worried that the flight mechanics in Anthem were glorified sprinting. It was just how you got around the map. But as you level up, according to Brennan Holmes, you will be able to improve your flight system. And skill expression with flying does kind of go into the fact that you can do different things rather than just fly. Perhaps shoot your weapons from the air. Perhaps have an aerial attack from the air and smash onto the ground. Stuff like that. We saw a little bit of that in the trailer, but hopefully there'll be even more. It's also super interesting that you can apparently upgrade how well essentially you can fly, and that leaves a lot of opportunity for BioWare to put hidden, caches of weapons and secrets up in high areas or areas previously inaccessible if you're a lower level, but if you put your skill points, for example, into these flight mechanics so you can fly higher and faster, you can get to these areas, you can complete these challenges, you can get this loot. That is a really exciting possibility. So, big piece of information, but I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking, well, that's great and all, but when are we going to get something really substantial? I'm talking about a new trailer and new Anthem gameplay. Well, someone asked the question, hey Brennan, I know it's a long shot, and you're probably not at liberty to say, but are we going to get any info or another look at the game before spring/summer? And he's likely referring to E3 2018, which of course happens around that time. Then Brennan Holmes responds, shakes Magic 8 Ball, outlook good. So that is a very good indication that we will get some info, maybe a new trailer, maybe something like official. I mean, this is all actually official, but I'm talking about a substantial new trailer before E3 2018. Again, the fact that he's responding, saying this, means that it's likely to happen. He wouldn't be responding if that wasn't the case. That we will be getting some sweet Anthem information relatively soon, because actually a lot of companies are doing this. Destiny 2 did this. They did their own special reveal around May, well before E3 2017. That way, you can control the news cycle and all of the information is about your product. It's very easy to get lost in E3 hype with other things that may come out. But moving on, we have one more piece of information to cover, and that is Anthem's longevity. Now, this piece of information is coming from a career opportunities posting by EA. So this is official, and they're looking for, at BioWare Austin, a live service executive producer for Anthem. The position summary states, BioWare is looking for a live service executive producer to complement our franchise executive producers and ensure we are building our HD experiences to sustain our player experiences and businesses for years beyond initial product launches. Moving on, it says, as the live service EP, your chief responsibility is to manage and lead the live service development of our games. You will do this by working in partnership with the launch product EP. You will ensure that the game design systems and economies of our games are built to maintain player engagement and our business for years of successful live game service. Whew, that's quite a mouthful, but essentially, it looks like Anthem is being made like a game similar to Destiny, where Destiny came out and it had 3 years of expansions and additions and free content updates and so on. Now, this posting again is telling us that we wouldn't have this type of posting if EA was planning to do with Anthem what, Activision does with Call of Duty and have Call of Duty release after Call of Duty release every single year. Those games are not necessarily built to last. Now, recently, games like Black Ops 3 are still getting updates like years and years after they came out, but that's generally not the norm. You don't get any more paid expansion, for example, any of that stuff. Usually with Call of Duty titles, it just melds into the next one because that is the business model, to buy the next game rather than sustain the current game. But this career opportunity is again telling us that it's the opposite, that EA is planning to drop Anthem and then have several years potentially of updates and additions to that. And looking at the landscape right now, with what happened with Destiny, where it got so great, what happened with Destiny 2, where it's not doing so well, let's just say, and then also what happened with The Division, where right now it's at its best state ever. Games that can launch and hopefully do well and then improve and improve and improve over years are actually doing quite well right now, and that seems to be the business model a lot of development studios are taking, and I think that's a business model people want to see. You don't want all of your progress, especially in a loot-based game, to mean nothing in only a year or two. You want progression and to get really dug into a certain franchise, and again, that's what happened with Destiny 1, and it was a really fantastic experience. So it does look like Anthem is following suit, so that is some good news. And guys, that is it for all of the Anthem information today. A lot of stuff we went over, but some very interesting stuff as well. If you want to see more Anthem content and be kept up to date with all of the Anthem updates, be sure to slap that subscribe button and make sure to press the bell beside subscribe if you actually want the subscribe button to do anything. Now guys, if you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.